grinding sheaves of grain out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now, the account of Jacob has to do with Joseph. Now, if you go back to chapter 42, he has said in verse 36, Joseph is no more. Joseph was his favorite. That's a whole other sermon. But Joseph was his favorite. He loved his son. He was his youngest son. But Joseph is no more. See, here's part of the story of Joseph you need to understand. If you were to continue reading in chapter 47, you would find out that Jacob sent his son Joseph to go check on his other sons while they were out in the field. And he left him that morning saying, go give me a report on the boys. And that's the last conversation Jacob ever had with his son. You see, you never know when someone's walking out that door if that's the last conversation you're ever going to have. And Jacob said, go check on the other boys. He left, and that was the last time he saw him. You know why it was the last time he saw him? Because the other boys came back that night, and they had found this jacket, Joseph's jacket that Jacob had made for him, the beautifully ornamented robe. And it was torn, and it was bloody. And they said, Dad, is this Joseph's jacket? And he said, they said, we found it. He must have been attacked by some wild animals. And Jacob just began to wail, and he began to weep. My child, my son, he's dead. He's no longer. And you fast forward to chapter 42. It's been years. It's been years. And what had happened is there was this famine. Over time, there was this famine that took place in the land where they were living. And they had no food. And Jacob said to his sons, he had another son later on named Benjamin, who was obviously now the youngest. But he said to the 10 oldest boys, don't just stand around here. Go to Egypt. Egypt, I heard, has food. Go get us some food from Egypt. So all 10 boys, they go to Egypt. And there's a ruler there in Egypt. And the ruler's not very nice to him. He's the governor of Egypt. There's Pharaoh, who's the king, and this guy's the right-hand man. And he's who they have to go to. And they bow down to him, they respect him, they pay him homage, they do all this, but he's not very nice to them. He starts asking them things about their family. He claims that they're spies. He says, no, you guys are spies. They're like, no, we're not spies. Our father asked us to come and get food. And he's like, no, I don't believe you. And he says, you prove it to me. He says, how many brothers do you have? Do you have any more brothers? They said, well, we have one younger brother at home. He says, go get that brother and bring him back. And you're going to be in prison until this happens. So what they did is they kept Simeon, one of their brothers. The governor kept Simeon in prison and said to the others, you go home, get that last one, and you come back. That leads us up to chapter 42, where all the boys come to Dad, and they're like, so Dad, we need to talk. You notice Simeon's not here? Well, and this is where Jacob just loses it. He's like, are you kidding me? Is my life all about bad news all the time? And that's where he says in verse 36, you have deprived me of my son Joseph. He's no more. Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin? Everything's against me. Now, it's at this point in the story that I want to tell you this. There were things that Jacob did not know. He had a perspective. His perspective was the things that he saw in front of him. His perspective was what he was experiencing. His perspective didn't look very good. But I want you to understand some things about the story of Jacob. His perspective was not telling the whole story. There were things he did not know that were very important and significant in this story. In fact, I want to tell you this. The things that he did not know were very vital to God fulfilling promises in his life. And you see, there are things in your life that you don't know about your circumstances. And I'm going to tell you this. For the year 2019, do yourself a favor. You ready for this? Here's a chunk of advice I want you to take. Real simple. Stop jumping to conclusions.
Amen.
Just stop jumping to conclusions. Stop looking with your perspective at something and go, everything's against me. God hates me. Life is terrible. This is never going to work out. This is bad. This is going to be a horrible year. Stop jumping to conclusions. Because it's oftentimes the things that you do not see that are the most significant things in your life. When a farmer plants seed and he grows a crop, do you know that that crop that grows, the significant part was underground that you never saw. It's the roots. It's the seed taking place in the ground there. What we get as a result is great, but you never have that result if underground where it was dark, things were not happening. And see, there are things that are happening in the dark in your life that you don't know of. You can't see it. You haven't heard about it. You have one perspective. That's the daylight perspective of today. This happened today. Life stinks. Everything's against me. And isn't it funny how we jump to like one or two things go wrong? Everything's against me. Here's the thing you need to know about Jacob, though. Everything he thought was against him was actually for him.
Amen.
Grab onto that. Everything he thought was against him was actually for him.
Amen.
Here's how we know this. Let me tell you the rest of the story. And I'm condensing chapter 42 all the way through 50, really. So go home and read it this week. Here's how I know this. Jacob lost his son Joseph. He was torn by animals. Simeon was in prison. They wanted to take Benjamin. Life is terrible. Here's what he didn't realize. When he sent Joseph years earlier to check on the boys, they didn't like Joseph because they were jealous. So they grabbed Joseph. They were going to kill him. But Reuben stepped in, the oldest one. He's like, let's not kill him. Let's just hurt him and sell him. One of these things. The older brother deal. I'm the youngest in my family, if you can't tell. They took Joseph's ornamented robe off him, threw him in a pit, until some travelers came by, a caravan. They sold him to them. See ya. Never going to see you again. They tore his robe. They killed one of their goats, poured blood on it, took it home, said, Dad, we found this out in the field. See, they were not truth tellers like you guys. Yeah, Nick, he says. God, the other, yeah, Nick, 58. I love you, Nick, man. That was great. I love the honesty. What Jacob didn't know is Joseph was still alive. Now, here's the interesting thing. Joseph is caravanned into Egypt. He's sold into slavery. He's working for a pretty powerful guy in slavery, and then is falsely accused of something. He resists temptation to the guy's wife, and instead for being honored for that, he is accused of attacking her, thrown into a dark dungeon in prison for a number of years. Now here's the crazy thing with what happens in prison. While he's in prison, God anoints him and gives him a gift to do what? Interpret other people's dreams. I've always laughed about this. He is waiting for his dream to be fulfilled. The whole story of Joseph started with the fact that at age 17, God gave him a dream. His isn't getting fulfilled. Those brothers aren't bowing down to him. He's sitting in a dark dungeon, and what's God do? Give him the God-given ability to interpret other people's dreams while his is not being fulfilled. So he thought that was his perspective. You know why I love it says this is the account of Joseph? Because Joseph and Jacob learned the same thing at the same time, just on different perspectives. Joseph, my dream, God's going to use me in huge ways, and he is sitting in a dungeon interpreting other people's dreams while his father thinks he's dead. But God was actually using that to bring deliverance to Joseph who would eventually bring deliverance to Jacob. Here's how it happens. He interprets the dreams of these guys. The next thing you know, they get released from prison. Years later, King Pharaoh, he had a terrible dream. He can't figure out what it means. And the guy who Joseph had interpreted the dream of goes, oh my word, oh my word. I was supposed to remember this guy. I was supposed to tell you about this guy like 3 years ago. But here's what happened. When I was in the dungeon, this other guy, a Hebrew, he interpreted my dream and it came exactly like he said. King Pharaoh said, go get him. Joseph comes out of prison, tells the king what his dream means. And he went in one day from a dungeon to the right hand of the throne in Egypt to be the most powerful person in Egypt in one day. Look, when you're sitting in a dark place, if you're in a dark place today, I want you to know that tomorrow is a whole new day. Amen. And in one day, now there's a lot of crud he went through. There was a lot of stuff that didn't make sense from his perspective. From his perspective, it didn't make sense because this is what he saw. I saw a hard time. I saw my brothers jealous. I saw my brothers be mean to me. I saw myself get sold. My family sold me. I saw myself get falsely accused. I saw myself sitting in a dungeon. I saw myself helping other people, but no one was helping me. And the next thing you know, he is in the highest position of authority. God